The night was cold, sharper than usual, and the streets were empty, covered in a thin layer of mist. A young human named Daniel walked home after a long day of work, his jacket pulled tight against the wind. He preferred silence at night. But that evening, silence felt heavy, almost unnatural, like something was wrong. As he passed the alien medical center, a strange sound reached his ears. At first, he thought it was only the wind pushing against the broken shutters, but then he heard it again. A weak cry, almost too soft for human ears. Daniel stopped walking, his heart thumping harder than before. Something inside him whispered that he should not ignore the sound. He stepped closer to the wall of the medical center, his boots crunching against the frozen ground. There, in the shadow of the building, he saw a small shape curled against the door. At first, he thought it was only a bundle of old cloth someone had thrown away, but when he bent down, the truth froze him in place. It was a child, not a human child, but an alien girl, her body trembling, her skin pale and cracked like thin glass. Her tiny hands were pressed to her chest, as if she was fighting to keep her heart inside. Her breath came in short gasps, everyone sounding like it could be her last. Daniel's first instinct was to knock on the medical center's door. He hammered his fist against the metal door, shouting for help. "Hey, someone's here! She's dying out here!" For a long moment, there was no answer. Finally, the door cracked open just enough for a pair of glowing alien eyes to peer out. The doctor inside did not even look at the girl properly. With a calm and cold voice, he said, "She was already seen. She cannot be saved." The words hit Daniel like a slap. "What do you mean? She's a child. You can't just leave her here." But the door shut again, the lock clicking into place. Daniel stood there, in disbelief, staring at the lifeless wall. The girl let out another weak sound, almost like a whimper. Daniel turned back to her and dropped to his knees. Her eyes opened just a little, shining faintly in the dark. He saw pain in them, but also confusion, as if she was asking him a question without words. "Why am I left here?" Daniel's throat tightened. He picked her up carefully, and she weighed almost nothing, as if she had not eaten in days. Her head rested against his chest, and he could feel her shallow breathing. He whispered softly, "Don't give up, little one. I won't leave you here." The decision was instant, made from instinct more than logic. He could not walk away, no matter what the doctors had said. He carried her through the empty streets, searching desperately for someone, anyone, who might help. The alien hospitals he passed were closed, their lights dim, their doors locked tight. None of them wanted to open, and none of them cared to hear a human's desperate pleas. Daniel felt anger rising with every rejection. He thought, how could they call themselves doctors and leave her to die like trash? The girl coughed weakly, her body shaking in his arms. Her skin felt too cold, her pulse too faint. Daniel knew he was running out of time. But where could he take her? Who would accept an alien child abandoned by her own kind? As he stopped at a street corner, catching his breath, he looked down at her again. Her lips moved, but no words came out, only a dry whisper of sound. Still, he imagined she was begging him not to give up. In that moment, Daniel made a promise to himself. He would not fail her. If the alien doctors would not help, he would find another way. The night deepened, and the cold grew harsher. The streets were silent except for the sound of his boots and the faint breathing of the girl. He pulled his jacket tighter around her, trying to share. His warmth, her tiny frame disappeared inside his coat, her face pressed to his chest. He walked faster, pushing against the wind. His mind raced with thoughts. What could he do? Who could he turn to? Then, a thought sparked inside him, strange and desperate. There was one place still open at night, one place where healers worked without asking too many questions. Not a hospital, not a clinic, but a veterinary center, a place for animals. His heart pounded with both hope and fear. Could a vet save her? Was it even possible? It was madness, but madness was better than letting her die in his arms. Daniel looked down at her fragile face once more. Her eyes were half closed, her breath shallow, her small fingers clutching weakly at his shirt. He whispered, "Hold on, little one. Just hold on a bit longer." And with that, he turned his steps toward the only hope left in the cold night, toward the vet's small building at the far edge of town. The night was cruel, but Daniel refused to let it win. For the first time, the girl was not alone. And for the first time, Daniel felt that his life was about to change forever. Daniel's arms ached from carrying her, but he did not stop. The alien girl's weight was nothing compared to the fear pressing on his chest. Every breath she took sounded weaker, like a candle flame about to die. The night felt endless, the streets silent, and the world seemed blind to her pain. He passed one more hospital and banged on the door. A tired alien guard appeared from the shadows and shook his head without even looking at the girl. "She is not worth the effort," the guard muttered coldly. The words echoed in Daniel's mind, filling him with anger. He shouted back, "She's a child! How can you say that?" But the guard already walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Daniel's heart sank. He pressed the girl closer to his chest, whispering, "I won't let them decide your worth." Her small fingers twitched as if she heard him. It gave him the strength to keep moving, even though hope was slipping away. The cold wind cut across his face as he walked faster. Shadows stretched along the empty road, whispering doubts into his ears. What if she dies before you find help? What if you're too late? He clenched his jaw, refusing to listen. Her life depended on him, and he would not give up. Then, in the distance, a dim light glowed. It was not a hospital, not a clinic, but a small building with a glowing sign of a paw print, the town's veterinary center. Daniel stopped for a moment, breathing hard, staring at the sign. A crazy thought flashed through his mind. Could a vet save her? He knew it was insane. She wasn't an animal. She was an alien child. But right now, no one else cared. No one else wanted to help. And maybe, just maybe, a vet who treated injured creatures every day might try. It was his only chance. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The smell of antiseptic and hay filled the air. A middle-aged man in a white coat looked up from a desk cluttered with papers. His eyes widened when he saw Daniel holding the frail alien girl. What is this?" the vet stammered. "She's not an animal," he added sharply. Daniel shook his head, desperate. "I know, but please, she's dying, and the hospitals won't take her. You're the only one left. Please, save her." The vet frowned, glancing at the child. Her breathing was shallow, her skin turning pale blue under the light. The vet's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is against every rule. I could lose my license. I could—" Before he could finish, the girl coughed, a sound so weak and broken that it filled the room with silence. Daniel's eyes burned as he said, "Look at her. She doesn't have time for rules." The vet stared for a long moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "Put her here quickly," he ordered, pulling a small table closer. Daniel laid the girl gently on the cold, metal surface. Her tiny chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath a battle. The vet's hands moved fast, attaching monitors and preparing oxygen. "She's fading," the vet muttered, his voice tense. He injected something into her arm and adjusted a mask over her face. Machines beeped weakly, showing numbers that made Daniel's stomach twist. The room felt like a battlefield. The vet worked with quiet determination, sweat forming on his forehead. Daniel stood beside the table, clutching the girl's hand, whispering, "Stay with me, please." Every second stretched into eternity. The sound of beeping monitors filled the silence, each one a reminder of how close death was. The vet looked at Daniel, his voice low but firm. "She has a chance, but it's very small. Her body is weak, her blood pressure unstable. If she makes it through the night, maybe she will survive, but—" He stopped himself, unwilling to finish the sentence. Daniel swallowed hard. He bent close to her ear and whispered softly, "You are not alone anymore, little one. I won't leave you." The girl's eyelids fluttered slightly, as if she was hearing him through the haze of pain. The vet gave another injection, adjusting the wires. Daniel could see doubt in his eyes, but also a spark of something else. Compassion. It was a risk, but the vet had chosen to try. And that choice made all the difference. Hours passed slowly. Daniel did not move from her side. He kept her hand in his, repeating words of comfort. Outside, the night grew colder, but inside, there was a faint warmth, the warmth of hope. The girl's breathing grew a little steadier, the machines beeping with more strength. Daniel let out a shaky breath, his eyes wet with relief. The vet finally leaned back, exhausted. "She's not safe yet, but she's fighting," he said. Daniel nodded, whispering, "That's all we need, for her to keep fighting." He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but this was the moment he made his choice, the desperate choice. He would fight for her life, even if the whole world turned away. The room was quiet, except for the steady beeping of the monitors. Daniel sat on a small stool beside the metal table, his eyes fixed on the fragile alien girl. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, her tiny body fighting for each breath. The vet stood at the other side, his hands steady, his eyes sharp, though Daniel could see the storm of doubt inside them. Dr. Howard, that was the vet's name, was a man who had treated broken wings, poisoned dogs, and even wounded farm animals, but never before had he looked at a patient like this. Not human, not beast, yet so small and helpless that his heart hesitated every time he moved a tool. He adjusted the oxygen mask carefully, his brow furrowed in thought. Daniel broke the silence, his voice soft. "Will she make it?" Dr. Howard did not answer immediately. His eyes scanned the monitor, then the girl's trembling chest. Finally, he said, "I don't know. Her body is weak. She's been left without care for too long. It's like she was abandoned to die." The word struck Daniel like a knife. He already knew she had been abandoned. The cold doctors had made that clear, but hearing it again from the vet made his blood boil. How could they just leave her like that? She's just a child. His voice shook with anger, but the vet only sighed. "Sometimes," Dr. Howard said, his eyes tired, "people make rules that forget about mercy. They see weakness as a waste. They close their doors to those who can't pay or those who don't matter to them." He looked at Daniel, his gaze sharp and searching. "But you didn't walk away. Why?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. Why had he stopped in the first place? Why had he picked her up? He thought of the moment he saw her lying in the shadows. Her eyes had looked at him as if asking for just one thing, not to be left alone. He finally whispered, "Because no one deserves to die alone in the cold." The vet studied him for a long time, and in that moment, something changed in his eyes. The doubt slowly shifted into determination. He nodded once, firmly, and turned back to his work. "If we're doing this, then we do it right. Help me." Daniel jumped to his feet, ready. The vet handed him a small vial and syringe, instructing quickly. "Hold her steady. Don't let her arm move. She needs this." Daniel's hands trembled as he followed the order. The girl stirred weakly, letting out a soft cry. Daniel whispered to her, "Shh, it's okay, you're safe. Stay with me." The medicine went in, and moments later the monitor beeped a little stronger. The vet gave a tight smile. "Good. Her body is responding. She's tougher than she looks." Hours passed in a blur of movement. The vet checked vitals, changed IV bags, applied cooling patches when her fever spiked. Daniel never once left her side, holding her hand, speaking softly whenever her breathing became ragged. At one point, her tiny fingers squeezed his weakly. It was barely anything, but Daniel felt it like a spark of hope. Dr. Howard noticed it too, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "She's fighting," he muttered, almost to himself. Daniel nodded quickly. "Yes, she's not giving up." For the first time since she was brought in, the vet allowed himself a small smile. It was faint, but it softened his tired face. In his eyes, Daniel saw something more than professionalism. He saw respect. Respect for the little alien girl who refused to let go. The night dragged on, the clock ticking past midnight. The room smelled of medicine and antiseptic. Daniel's body was exhausted, but his mind refused to rest. He kept his gaze fixed on her face, memorizing every tiny detail. The curve of her fragile jaw, the way her chest rose and fell, the faint shimmer of her alien skin under the lamp. Then, suddenly, her eyes fluttered open, just for a second. Two faint glimmers stared up at Daniel, unfocused and weak. He leaned closer, whispering urgently, "You're safe. Don't be afraid." Her lips parted slightly. No sound came, but he could see it. She was trying to understand why he was still there. The vet noticed too, his sharp eyes softening. "She sees you," he said quietly. "Sometimes, that's all it takes. A reason to keep fighting." The moment passed quickly, her eyes sliding shut again, but the connection lingered in the room like a quiet miracle. Daniel felt his chest tighten with emotion. He realized he would never forget that look, not for the rest of his life. As dawn began to creep at the edges of the night, the vet finally stepped back, exhausted but steady. "She's stable for now. The worst part is over," he said. Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, his shoulders sagging with relief. He looked at Dr. Howard and whispered, "Thank you." But the vet shook his head, his sharp eyes locking on Daniel. "No, don't thank me yet. She's alive because of you. If you hadn't carried her here, she would already be gone." His words hit Daniel hard, filling him with both pride and fear, because now Daniel knew this wasn't just chance. This was responsibility. The girl's life was tied to him, and he couldn't walk away anymore. And as the first rays of sunlight broke through the small window, Daniel looked at her fragile form and whispered, "I'm not leaving you. Not now. Not ever." The vet's eyes softened again, but behind them, a shadow of worry remained, for he knew this was only the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could imagine. The morning sun crept slowly through the dusty window of the vet's small clinic, but inside the room, time felt frozen. Daniel sat slumped in the chair beside the table, his eyes fixed on the fragile figure wrapped in thin blankets. The alien girl's chest rose and fell so lightly that he sometimes feared she had stopped breathing altogether. Dr. Howard moved quietly around the room, checking the monitors, adjusting the IV drip. His face was calm, but Daniel could see the tension in his eyes. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown. Every weak cough from the girl made Daniel's heart stop. "She's stable," the vet said softly, "but stability doesn't mean safety. Her body is fighting, but she's at the edge. A single shift could pull her back or push her over." Daniel rubbed his tired face with his hands. His body begged for sleep, but his mind refused to let go. He leaned closer to her, brushing a strand of silvery hair from her forehead. Her skin was clammy, her lips pale. He whispered, "Stay with me, little one. Just stay." The girl stirred faintly, her eyelids twitching but not opening. Her small hand twitched, and for a second, Daniel felt her weak fingers brush against his own. It was a fragile touch, like a dying flame trying to keep warm against the wind. It gave him the strength to keep sitting, to keep waiting. Hours passed slowly. The vet stepped out to prepare more medicine, leaving Daniel alone in the room. The silence grew heavy, broken only by the soft hiss of the oxygen tank. Daniel found himself talking quietly, though he knew she couldn't answer. "My name's Daniel," he said softly. "I don't know your name, but I promise you, I'm not like them. Those doctors outside. They gave up. They left you. But I'm here, and I won't let you go. So fight. Please, fight." As if hearing him, her breathing hitched suddenly, her chest rising too fast. The monitor beeped wildly, alarms flashing red. Daniel's heart leapt in terror. "Doctor, doctor!" he shouted, panic in his voice. Dr. Howard rushed back in, his eyes sharp and focused. "She's crashing. Move aside," he barked. Daniel stumbled back, his fists clenched helplessly as the vet worked fast, injecting another vial, adjusting the mask, pressing against her tiny chest with steady hands. The sound of the beeping filled the room like thunder. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes locked on her fragile body. For a terrifying moment, the monitor went flat. A single endless tone filled the air. Daniel's knees weakened, his chest tight. No, don't do this," he whispered, his voice breaking. The vet didn't stop, his eyes burning with determination. "Come on, little fighter, breathe," he urged, pressing again. Seconds felt like hours. Then, suddenly, the monitor beeped once, then again. The flat line broke into an uneven but steady rhythm. Daniel let out a shaky breath, his hands trembling. Dr. Howard leaned back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "She's back. For now," he muttered, his voice heavy with both relief and warning. Daniel dropped to his knees beside the table, his head lowered. His heart felt like it had been torn apart and stitched together again in the span of minutes. He reached out and gently held her hand once more. "You scared me," he whispered, his eyes wet. "But I knew you wouldn't give up." The vet placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, his voice quieter now. "She's alive because you stayed. Sometimes they hold on because someone refuses to let go." Daniel nodded slowly, staring at her delicate face. He could not explain it, but he felt something forming deep inside him, a bond stronger than reason. He had found her in the cold night, abandoned and forgotten. But now she was his responsibility. The hours that followed were fragile. Every cough, every twitch, every beep of the monitor carried a weight. Daniel never left her side. He whispered stories about his childhood, about the stars he used to watch from his rooftop, anything to fill the silence, to remind her that life was still waiting for her. Once, her lips parted slightly, as if she was trying to say something, but no sound came, only a weak breath. Daniel leaned closer, his heart aching. "It's okay, save your strength. We'll talk when you're ready." By evening, the danger had passed, though the shadow of death still lingered near. The vet finally sat down, exhausted. "She's fragile, but she's stronger than most think," he said, almost with admiration. Daniel smiled faintly, brushing her hand gently. "Yeah, she's a fighter." And as the night returned, Daniel realized something. She was not just fighting for her own life, she was giving him something too. A reason to fight, a reason to stay awake, a reason to believe in mercy again. Between life and death, she had chosen to stay, and Daniel promised himself that as long as she breathed, he would never let her face the darkness alone. The clinic was quiet after the storm of the night before. Daniel sat by the small bed where the alien girl now rested, covered with blankets. Her breathing was slow but steady, her chest rising with more strength than yesterday. The beeping machine sounded calmer, like a soft heartbeat filling the room. Dr. Howard checked her vitals and then finally leaned back with relief. "She's out of the danger zone for now," he said, wiping his forehead. Daniel let out a long breath he didn't know he was holding. The weight on his chest felt lighter, though not gone. The vet gave him a tired smile. "You should get some rest too. You look worse than my patients." But Daniel shook his head. "I'll sleep later. I need to be here if she wakes up." Dr. Howard studied him for a moment, then quietly left the room, giving him space. Daniel stayed, his eyes never leaving her small, fragile form. Hours passed slowly. Daylight faded into another evening. He found himself talking to her again, soft words, almost whispers, as if his voice alone might keep her tethered to life. "You don't know me," he murmured, "but my name is Daniel. I found you in the cold, and I won't let you be alone again. I don't know your story, I don't even know your name, but I promise, if you fight, I'll fight with you." As the room grew dim under the orange glow of the sunset, something happened. Her fingers twitched again, then curled slowly against the blanket. Daniel leaned closer, his heart pounding. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy, as if lifting them cost all the strength in the world. And then, her eyes opened. Two dim glimmers stared at him, confused, fragile, yet alive. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He whispered quickly, "Hey, you're safe. It's okay. Don't be afraid." Her lips parted slightly, her throat working as if trying to form sound. Daniel leaned closer, barely daring to breathe. And then, he heard it, faint as a sigh but clear. One word, trembling and broken. "Why?" Daniel froze, the word echoing in his chest. She had spoken, her very first word since he found her. Her voice was weak, but the weight of the question was heavy. Her eyes, cloudy with exhaustion, searched his face, as if demanding to know the reason behind everything. Daniel's heart ached. He wanted to give her 1,000 answers, but only one truth came to his lips. "Because you deserve to live," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The girl blinked slowly, her lips trembling. Her gaze lingered on him, as if trying to understand those words, as if no one had ever said them to her before. A faint tear slipped down the corner of her alien eye. Daniel gently brushed it away with his thumb, his hand shaking. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I won't let anyone hurt you again." Her eyes closed slowly, exhaustion pulling her back into sleep. But Daniel sat frozen, his heart beating hard. The sound of that one word, "why," replayed in his head over and over. It was more than just a question. It was a wound, a lifetime of pain packed into a single syllable. Dr. Howard returned quietly and saw Daniel sitting there, his eyes red. "She spoke?" he asked in surprise. Daniel nodded, his voice low. Her first word was, "Why?" The vet sighed, rubbing his chin. Children ask why when they don't understand the world. But for her, it's deeper. She was abandoned, Neil left with nothing. Her question isn't just about this moment, it's about her whole life. Daniel clenched his fists, feeling anger rise in his chest. Anger toward the doctors who left her. Anger toward a system that decided she wasn't worth saving. But when he looked back at her sleeping face, his anger softened into something else. A vow, silent but unbreakable. He whispered, "I'll give you the answer you deserve. Not with words, but with actions." The night settled in once more, the clinic quiet except for the sound of her breathing. Daniel sat awake beside her, his thoughts heavy but clear. He realized this was no longer just about saving a life. This was about giving her a reason to believe, a reason to trust, a reason to stay in this world. And in that dimly lit room, Daniel made his silent promise. Whatever it cost, whatever dangers came, he would protect. The next morning came slow and heavy. Sunlight crept through the small cracks of the vet's windows, spilling gold across the floor. The alien girl still rested, her breathing steady now, though weak. Daniel sat close, his eyes never leaving her face. Every rise and fall of her chest felt like proof that his fight had meaning. Dr. Howard entered quietly, carrying new medicine. "She's healing," he said, his voice low. "But she needs time. Her body is fragile, her spirit even more. Be careful, Daniel. One wound may close, but deeper wounds take longer to heal." Daniel nodded, brushing the girl's thin hair gently. "I'll wait as long as it takes," he whispered. His voice carried a weight, a vow. But outside the small clinic, trouble had already begun to stir. News of what happened had spread through the streets like wildfire. Whispers reached the alien doctors who had abandoned her. They felt their authority mocked, their decision challenged, and worse, the shame of being proven wrong burned in their pride. By noon, shadows appeared outside the vet's clinic. Tall alien figures cloaked in gray robes. Their glowing eyes watching from a distance. Dr. Howard saw them first, peering through the glass. His face turned grim. "They've come," he muttered. Daniel frowned, standing quickly. "Who?" "The ones who left her to die," the vet said. "They don't like being defied, especially by a human." Daniel's fists tightened. He looked at the fragile girl sleeping peacefully and felt his chest burn. "They can't have her," he said firmly. The door rattled a few minutes later. A heavy knock shook the quiet air of the clinic. Dr. Howard opened it slightly, but before he could speak, one of the robed doctors stepped forward. His voice was cold, sharp as glass. "We know the child is here. Hand her over." Daniel stepped into the doorway before the vet could answer, his voice steady, though his heart pounded. "She's not yours anymore. You left her outside to die." The alien's glowing eyes narrowed. "You are human. You have no right to decide her fate. Step aside before you make matters worse." Daniel felt anger surge inside him. He remembered the weak word the girl had spoken. Why? And his promise that she would never ask it again. He clenched his jaw and said, "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." For a moment, silence filled the doorway. The aliens stared at him, their tall figures looming. Dr. Howard stood frozen, shocked at Daniel's defiance. But then one of the robed doctors sneered. "Do you even know what she is? She is broken, unwanted, a waste of resources." Daniel's eyes burned with fury. "She's alive, that's enough. She deserves better than your cruelty." The aliens exchanged glances, their faces hardening. "We will return," one of them hissed. "And when we do, not even your human stubbornness will save her." They turned and vanished back into the streets, leaving the air heavy with threat. Dr. Howard closed the door slowly, locking it. He looked at Daniel with worry. "You've made enemies today, powerful ones." Daniel looked down at the girl, still sleeping, unaware of the danger outside. He whispered, "Then let them come. She has me now, and I won't let them take her." The rest of the day passed in tense silence. Daniel stayed alert, every creak of the building making him glance toward the door, but the girl stirred in her sleep, turning weakly, her small hand slipping from the blanket. Daniel caught it gently, holding it in his own. Her touch was soft, fragile, but it calmed him. Later that night, she woke again for a brief moment, her eyes half open, still clouded with weakness. She looked at Daniel, confusion flickering in her gaze. Her lips moved, but only one faint whisper came out. "Safe." Daniel's heart broke at the question. He squeezed her hand gently, leaning close. "Yes," he whispered firmly. "You're safe with me." Her eyes closed again, but this time, her lips curved into the faintest shadow of peace. For the first time, Daniel saw a spark of trust, and he knew it was worth every risk, every enemy, every threat. Dr. Howard returned quietly, setting down supplies. "You're both walking a dangerous path," he warned. Daniel glanced at him, his voice low but unshaken. "Maybe, but if danger is the price of protecting her, I'll pay it." The vet studied him, then nodded slowly, respect in his tired eyes. "Then we must prepare," he said, "because the shadows will return sooner than you think." Daniel sat back, holding the girl's hand, his mind heavy but clear. He had stepped into a fight far bigger than himself, but he wasn't afraid, because for the first time, she had asked him if she was safe. And he had answered with truth, and he would keep answering that truth. For as long as he breathed, the night passed with heavy silence. Daniel sat awake by the girl's bedside, his hand holding hers as though letting go would mean losing her forever. Dr. Howard dozed off in the corner, too tired after hours of fighting to keep her alive. But Daniel's eyes never closed. He knew danger was waiting outside, lurking in the shadows. When dawn finally broke, the first light of the sun touched the girl's face. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, weak but more alive than before. She blinked at Daniel, as if trying to make sure he was real. Her lips parted, a faint whisper escaping. "You stayed." Daniel's chest tightened. He leaned closer, his voice firm but gentle. "Of course I stayed. I told you. You're not alone anymore." Her small hand moved weakly, clutching his finger with surprising strength. For the first time since he found her in the cold, she wasn't trembling. Dr. Howard stirred awake and checked her vitals. A rare smile crossed his tired face. "She's stronger than I thought. Another day or two, and she might be out of danger completely." Daniel felt relief wash over him like warm sunlight. But before he could speak, the door rattled again. The shadows had returned. 3 tall figures in gray robes stood outside, their glowing eyes sharp and cold. They pushed the door open, stepping inside without permission. "This ends now," one of them hissed. "You defied us once, human, but you will not keep what doesn't belong to you." Daniel stood quickly, placing himself between the bed and the intruders, his fists clenched, his heart pounding. "She belongs to no one," he said, his voice steady. "You left her to die, but she's alive, and as long as I breathe, you won't touch her." The tallest alien stepped forward, his presence heavy like a storm. "You don't understand what you've done," he growled. "She is marked as worthless by her own kind. By saving her, you've broken our judgment. Do you think one human can fight against an entire system?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He thought of her first word, "Why?" and her second, "Safe." He remembered the look in her eyes when she whispered them, and he knew his answer. "Yes," he said, his voice filled with fire. "One human can make a difference because sometimes one is enough." The aliens hissed in anger, but before they could move, the girl's weak voice broke the tension. "Please," she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached out. Daniel turned quickly, kneeling beside her. Her eyes, though dim, were filled with something new, fear mixed with hope. "Don't let them take me," she whispered, her voice fragile but desperate. Daniel squeezed her hand firmly. "They won't," he promised, his voice steady as stone. "You're mine to protect now." Something in his words made the robed aliens hesitate. They exchanged quick glances, their authority suddenly shaken, for in their world, no human had ever dared to claim one they had already discarded. It was an insult to their pride, but also a challenge they weren't prepared to face in that small clinic with witnesses. Dr. Howard stepped forward, his voice calm but sharp. "You've already marked her as beyond saving, so what does it matter to you if she lives under his care? Leave before your hypocrisy is seen for what it truly is." The aliens glared, their glowing eyes narrowing, but slowly, they backed away. "This isn't over," one of them spat. Then they vanished into the streets once again, their shadows fading with the morning light. Silence filled the room. Daniel let out a shaky breath, his shoulders finally relaxing. He turned back to the girl, who was still watching him with wide, fragile eyes, her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "You protect me," she whispered. Daniel nodded, his voice soft. "Always," Dr. Howard sighed, shaking his head. "You've made yourself a target now," he warned. Daniel looked at him, then back at the girl. "I don't care, she's worth it." The vet studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Then it seems her new beginning starts with you." Daniel sat back on the chair, holding her hand gently. The fear and exhaustion of the past nights lingered, but something new filled the room now. Hope, Fragile but real, the girl had been left outside with nothing. Abandoned by those who should have cared for her. But now she had something priceless. She had someone who refused to let go. And Daniel knew his life would never be the same. He whispered softly to her, "This is just the start, little one. From now on, you'll never face the world alone again." The girl closed her eyes slowly, her face peaceful. For the first time, she was not only alive, she was safe. And in that moment, the cold night that had almost taken her was replaced by the warmth of a new beginning.